and welcome to the Amplifying Scientific Innovation video podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sophia Onya, founder and CEO of the Sophia Consulting Firm, a life science marketing and communications consultancy that was established in New York City with the goal of amplifying scientific innovation. The goal of this podcast is to showcase scientific innovation stemming from global life science companies through conversations with senior leaders who share their unique leadership journey, corporate vision, and industry outlook. My guest today is Dr. Melanie Matheu, founder and CEO of Prellis Biologics, the first company to develop holographic laser projection printing and apply this method for the development of human tissues and organs. Melanie is a research scientist turned entrepreneur with cross-disciplinary experience in immunology, chemistry, biophysics, molecular biology, and protein engineering, with a specialty demonstrated by over 15 years of experience in 2-photon imaging of immune responses. Melanie has filed 7 patents, worked on 2 immunotherapeutics, covered biotechnology companies for investors for over 20 years, served as the youngest member on the scientific advisory board of a companion animal medicine company, while also serving as a published expert in immune cell interactions in tissues. In fact, her first patent was at the age of 19 in the field of synthetic organic chemistry. I was referred to Melanie by Jennifer Bitchman, who is an associate director of marketing at Rieta Pharmaceuticals and a fan of the Amplifying Scientific Innovation podcast, who was like, hey, Melanie will be a great person for the show. So in addition, I'm always happy to feature fellow women in STEM. Welcome to the show, Melanie.
Thank you for that kind introduction. It was lovely. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. You've done a lot, and I would never start a podcast by saying to anyone to tell me about yourself, because part of the reason why you're invited to this platform is because you've done a lot of work to showcase your brilliance as a scientist. So it's a pleasure to have you here. So my first question for you is probably my favorite, and it is quite simple. What is your definition of scientific innovation?
Yeah, it's funny from the scientific perspective. I think I find that question actually less simple, and I think that's and with a good reason. I think that scientific innovation comes in a lot of different flavors, and different. It's almost like different people having a different personality. What is innovative to them? And I had a professor say to me once, in science there are the surfers and the divers. They're the people who dive really deep into one topic, right? They take that little bubble of knowledge and they move it further. And to me, in a lot of ways that is innovative, because they have to bring in different ways to solve problems, to move a field forward incrementally. Takes a lot of innovative work often. And then the surfers, which he was referring to, they see a wave coming, they see a new branch of innovation, and they paddle and they catch that wave, and how well they ride it and how well they do that. And I think that can also be very innovative, because they're bringing different skills and backgrounds and techniques to a field that is moving forward quickly, right? And bringing innovation there. And so my favorite type of innovation, and it's probably personality based, is when I see, I'm just a wildly curious person. I love chemistry, I love biology, I love the immune system. And when I have an opportunity to bring knowledge from different fields together and combine them, I think I love that type of innovation, because it's going to help you answer questions you could never even ask before. Expertise. So, and I think that's reflected in our company, if I may, where we bring, we took basically a really complex imaging system and we fine-tuned it and added some things to it, and we made it into a bioprinting system like the world has never seen before. And so that takes a lot of optics, chemistry, physics to even do that. And then now we can start answering questions in cell biology. So I like innovation that brings together disparate fields and has them, push forward the boundaries of knowledge that way.
To say I love your definition is an understatement. One of the things I love about the surfer diver analogy is the surfers to me are more like generalists and the divers are specialists. And I think there's a need for both. And maybe traditionally, we always thought that for you to be a master in scientific innovation, you had to be a subspecialist. And now we're understanding that there's something to be said for people like yourself that have a commanding knowledge of synthetic chemistry, of protein biology, of even mechanical engineering, because the whole process of tissue regeneration and 3D bioprinting, for example, it's not a simple science in any way, shape, or form. So thank you for bringing out the complexity of that in your definition.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
So my next question for you, obviously you've done a lot, and I can imagine this would be like asking you to pick a favorite toy, child, or whatever the case might be. So, but what would you consider to be your most significant professional or scientific accomplishment to date?
Well, I love what we're doing now, obviously, with our company. It's exciting what we're doing every day. We're really trying to push the needle on the development of human tissues, and I think having, made inroads in that area is a major scientific accomplishment. It is like picking a favorite child, though. I'm starting to think about all the other cool stuff that happened in my life. But I think it's important because it's not just innovation for our company, it's innovation for anyone who wants to do large scale tissue engineering and really get after some innate questions that you can't answer unless you're doing experiments on humans, right? So if you can recreate a human tissue in a dish and it functions well enough to give you good scientific readouts that mimic what would happen in the human body, imagine how that speeds drug discovery, right? Imagine how that speeds up really just answering basic science questions. Can if you have cells growing in a way that mimics human tissue, there's so much you can do that we can't do today. And that's just really deeply exciting for me, because it's not just what our company is going to do. It's what the academic researchers that use our systems do. It's what, other companies can do with that too in their drug discovery. And so for me, making, readily accessible human tissues means we get better answers. We don't have to test everything in animals. And hopefully, my greatest hope is that becomes part of the process for drug development and testing, because better drug faster to help more people is ideal, right?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Regenerative medicine is a topic that is of interest to me. I've written in MIT Technology Review and other outlets about this, and that's why I'm quite excited to have you, for everyone to hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak, about the power of this technology. Right. So, in your opinion, what do you think are some unique challenges that female leaders face? And how does the life science industry compare to others from a diversity and inclusion perspective?
Yeah, really great question. And certainly not the first time I've gotten it. As a woman, I can point to a lot of places where, what I've said has been overlooked, or the common trope of, hey, I just said that 5 minutes ago and this guy repeated it. Now you're paying attention. So, I feel like that's happened to all of us, right? At some point or another. And, it certainly feels like it happens a little bit more to myself than it does to some of my male colleagues. But, my philosophy is not to dwell on that. My philosophy is to raise my hand and say, wait, I said that 5 minutes ago and I have something to add to it because I thought of it. But, I think, and I think a lot of women are really recognizing how important that is. And I think not only that, but the world is shifting in a way where kind of people have grown up experiencing that or hearing about it and seeing that I'm seeing that shift, and in some places faster than others. And I'd say the biosciences, it is shifting pretty fast. More women than men are graduating with higher degrees in the sciences. In the biological sciences, and I think that's really reflective in a couple places. So one is most of our scientific team in the cell biology range, they're female, most of them, and that's that wasn't by design. It was the resumes that came across my desk that were effectively blinded, right? And we have phenomenal women running these programs, asking good questions, doing just great science that supports our company and our ability to do interesting work. So that's happening. And then it's funny, I had a conversation with a VC I know really well the other day, who's pulling in people to vet his companies and to work with him. And he said, I just realized all of them are women. What's going on? And I said, more of us are graduating, more of us want good careers in this space. And so I do think that's really changing and shifting. In other places where it's not, I actually just got off giving a presentation before we chatted, and I was the only woman on the panel, which is great. There wasn't an all male panel. That's fantastic. But a lot of the questions were geared towards men and said, what is it like to be a businessman? It wasn't businessman / businesswoman, right? So there's still some room to grow, I think.
Yeah.
So it's shifting in a positive direction, and I'm convinced it will continue to go that way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you have to speak up and you have to be assertive. I don't think we have any issues bringing in women at the entry level. I think where things trail off is at the C level. It's in the boardroom. It's in panels and sort of any area of high visibility. And I think that we have a job to do, not just to advance opportunities for ourselves, but to the point that you made earlier, to help create opportunities for the best qualified individuals. And if those happen to be women, that's even better, right? It's good for all of us.
It is.
Great. So what is the meaning behind the name of your company, and what is your vision for the future?
Oh, great question. So Prellis is kind of two words smushed together. It's printed and trellis. And so trellis, like a plant would grow along a trellis. And we're effectively printing these tiny scaffolds. I actually have one on my desk. This is it's a little hard to see with the light, but you can see it's it's a three-dimensional vascularized kind of block, and we can stack things like this. It's not the best image of it, but we can stack things like that cells will grow along. They actually start to form their own blood vessels in between some of the blood vessels we lay down. And then we can add additional cells on top. So we can build a vascularized tissue that way pretty quickly, or we can flow them through the internal vasculature and then make, a true blood vessel going through. And so that's what we print. We print trellises for cell growth. And so it was a friendly sounding name. When you start a company, you make sure it doesn't mean something bad in another language, somewhere else in the world. And that's what we came up with.
That's wonderful. I love the story. I think that's remarkable. So earlier this year, your company had announced that you had generated 300 human antibodies that have neutralization potential against SARS-CoV-2, which of course is COVID-19. Can you share more details about this program?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the first 300. We're now up to over a couple thousand, and we're pretty happy about that. Yeah. And so we've started to vet antibodies that are active against SARS, the S protein. Ones that bind specifically to the S1, ones that bind specifically to the S2, which is exposed more readily after the furin cleavage site. So it's part of the virus entry into the cells. So we have libraries of antibodies around those. And the other thing we've been tracking is the S protein actually is the epitopes where antibodies bind has been mutating as the virus spreads throughout the population as about as readily as the common cold virus does. And we've been tracking per some public database information, which mutations are becoming prevalent over time. So we actually now have several libraries of antibodies that will bind to those mutant regions as well. And I think that's going to be important going forward in case, one of those really becomes a dominant strain. So we thought we'd get that on deck as well. Yeah.
That's very exciting. And I'm sure that when you go to bed at night, no matter how tired you might be, you have to feel good about yourself because you're doing something really positive for the society. So congratulations to you and your team on the progress you've made.
Yeah, I feel lucky. We have a very mission-driven team. Everyone is here because they believe in the power of medicine and using human tissue to accelerate that. I'll just say one more thing about the SARS program too. Beyond those two, we've identified 2 other drug targets that actually will help neutralize or prevent viral replication. So we have libraries of antibodies against those that we're testing right now in the lab. So our goal there is to build a kind of multi-antibody cocktail therapeutic that hits 3 areas of virus replication, virus cell entry, and then of course blocking the virus itself. So we're quite excited about that as a more robust therapeutic option going forward.
Oh, that's good. I think it's always nice to have a diversity of options when you have a common enemy, especially one that has been as virulent and impactful as this particular virus. So once again, congratulations to you and your team. And in your opinion, what do you think we could have done differently as an industry to mitigate the impact of COVID-19?
Oof, I have a lot of opinions about
oh,
this
there
one.
You go. That's what I want to hear.
You know, all right. One thing, there are a few things I could say. I've studied pandemic disease before, and I've been, lucky enough to interact with people who have studied pandemic disease throughout their careers, particularly focusing on the 1918 pandemic. I published with some preeminent scientists down in Scripps that have worked on this their whole careers. And, the thing about, even though it's a new virus, the spreading dynamics were pretty clear from the beginning. It looked a lot like a common cold virus. And I think we could have just approached that better from a public health perspective. And I think, part of that is educating people, right? What does viral spread look like? How does it occur? And then having a really clear message around that from the beginning, I think would have really helped. A clear, simple message. And I think, hindsight is 2020, which is a terrible phrase now, right? This has been a rough year. But right. But it is really true, that I think, education around what these things look like, because although this is the first one we've had in modern memory, the first pandemic, it may not really be the last. There are a lot of viruses out there that are very close to, if not already starting to spill over into the human population. So education, public health understanding, just understanding, how we stop the spread of viral disease and dynamics. But in the industry, I think people moved so fast on this, and I am blown away by the advances that we've had. We've now demonstrated how quickly a safe vaccine can get moved to market, because we know so much about how to build a vaccine now, right? And relying on all of that science to speed up the process and save lives is it's just amazing, right? Like, we live in amazing times to see that happen in front of us.
I couldn't agree with you more. I also want to recognize the role that the regulators, especially the FDA, has played in expediting the review process. But I hope that we can learn, to your point earlier, I think we've had enough cases in history where we could have been more prepared. I've also seen that obviously infectious disease is now a hot topic that people are looking into. And I wish that was the case even 5 years, 10 years ago. But even better, I hope that 5 years, 10 years from now, that it's still a priority, because we have a tendency to sometimes get comfortable and then go back to our old.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think people are a little too comfortable. We just hadn't had that happen for so long, right? Even to the point where our vaccines are so good that we're not seeing, we see less childhood mortality in the US, and then people think vaccines aren't necessary anymore.
I know.
Just because they don't realize what they're actually already benefiting from. And then another, and I think the FDA point is brilliant. What I would love to see happen in the future is that we stay on a similar pace for drug development, right? So such that we can respond to things like this, and that we can not have to wait 2 to 3 to 5 years to get therapeutics to people who actually need them, right?
Completely agree with you. I think we could talk all day. Like, seriously, this is the kind of synergies that we've developed. But I guess my next question for you, thinking broadly, aside from your company, of course, is there any other technology or company that you are currently excited about, and why?
Oh, yeah. So, gosh, There are so many, it's almost hard to pick one, right? I'll go back to kind of our roots as a company. Our first people to put money into the company, VC money, was a group called Indie Bio. And a little plug for them, Arvind Gupta and Pro Bronson have written a book. It's pretty high up there in the Amazon charts. Oh gosh, they're going to kill me because I'm forgetting. Decoding the World. That's the name. Decoding the World. And they talk about this gestalt, this San Francisco rough and tumble little VC group that has a laboratory in the basement, and they bring in 15 companies at once, and they're all trying to prove out the science in 4 months, right? So they can give a competent pitch around their company and what they want to build for the world. And they're very agnostic as to what kind of technology they bring in. So we were part of batch 5 in that group, and we had so many amazing cohorts in that group. So I'll just talk about some of them because I know it personally, and I'm so proud of what they've all built. One of them was a vegan food company, and I'm not a vegan, but I understand it and I know why it's probably good for the world. But they were making things like milk and mayonnaise and other things like that, but it tasted exactly like the real stuff. Like I couldn't distinguish it. In fact, the mayonnaise tasted better than any mayonnaise I ever had. So I'm like, you don't need to be a vegan to love this stuff. And they did it by doing like really interesting AI work around flavor profiles. And so I just thought that was so cool. There was another company that came right after us that's doing bee work. And as we know, all of our food is pollinated by bees, all of our vegetables and fruits, or fruits mostly, right? And if we lose bees, we lose our food source. I think that was Albert Einstein a long time ago that talked about that. And they found a way to almost train bees to do better crop pollination, and they've been demonstrating it out in the fields. 30% gains in pollination with this training of bee colonies, and that's fantastic, right?
Wow.
Right?
I'm trying to wrap my head around that one.
Yeah, it's really wild, and just so much cool technology just outside of my own field that I've loved seeing kind of come to life. We sat next to a company that's using nematodes for pesticide-free control of pests, right? And they're sending nematodes up to the International Space Station because they want to use them as a way to control pests in space. It's just for eventual colonization, right? So they have grants to do that. There's so many cool things going on in the world. Like really, we could talk all day about that too.
Oh, that's remarkable. It's funny, whenever I ask this question, somehow AI comes into the mix, right? And I think it's interesting to think about how we are just unraveling these types of emerging technologies. And it comes down to the point you made earlier about the surfers and the divers. I think that if we can continue to find ways to collaborate with people outside of our specialty areas, there's so much to discover in this world. So that's remarkable.
Totally.
Really.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And those companies are Notco, I believe it's BeFlow, and then what was it, Farinum. Those are just like 3 off the top of my head, but so many people are doing phenomenal work in those spaces.
That's remarkable. Farinum stands out to me for obvious reasons, but that's really good. Nice name. I think about the power of a name. All right. So thinking broadly, what do you think are some key consideration factors that will be important for sustaining innovation in the life science industry?
Yes. So where, I think the first question is, where are the inventions and the talent coming from? And one thing I like is I see a little shift in that model. So a lot of times, I think the old model used to be larger companies, or maybe, a university technology gets out licensed and a company gets started, or the large company has a little R&D branch, right? And they derive their technologies from this, and the professors stayed in the university and the grad students worked to become a professor, and it was all, it's all very separate and siloed. And I think, at least in my experience and from my viewpoint, I see that changing a lot. Postdocs are realizing now that they can go start a company if they have an idea. That's what I did, right? And it was an idea that was so separate from my research that I was actually able to start it and file our own patents that weren't university related. And I think the VCs are also understanding the value of that too. There's so many talented postdocs that aren't going to get that, or maybe even don't want to be a professor. They want to go do something new. They want to see what they can build with with capital from VCs and do it much faster than they would in the lab. So I'm starting to see, at least in the Bay Area and from my perspective, a lot of those lines are blurred. And I think supporting that and taking talent and ideas and not kind of locking them away in a university where you do 25-year, 30, 40-year research career, publish some papers, nothing ever gets developed into a clinical application. I think shifting that is really amazing. And I think a lot of people are very attuned to that shift happening, and I give a lot of credit to the VC world that is occurring. And I like the fact that, there's NSF grants available, there's SBIRs, STTRs available to also support that process. And I think one thing they could do to help have better things come out of that is actually make the funding cycle shorter. And when you have a grant reviewed as an SBIR, it's like 5-6 months, and then you don't get the money, and like these entrepreneurs, you need to eat, right? Like you can't just wait around for the review committee to decide, right? So if they could speed up that cycle, I think that would also support a lot of really good inventions and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And again, what we've seen from COVID is that anything is possible, and that we can actually find new ways. I mean, we have so many amazing technologies that are out there now that for us to continue to rely on the sort of very slow way to evaluate grants, it's actually stifling innovation in some ways. So thank you for pointing that very important aspect out.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you for asking the question. It's great. It's
no worries. So my second to last question for you is, what concerns do you have about the future of the life science industry, especially as it relates to key issues such as drug pricing? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, drug pricing. So one thing that I see happening in the sciences, because we're looking at producing our own kind of COVID cocktail, right? And so ready manufacturing, there's a lot of overhead in manufacturing, right? And with good reason. You want everything to be compliant with good manufacturing processes, et cetera. But for a small company to raise enough capital to actually go into realistic manufacturing, it's just prohibitively expensive in some cases. And I think, that kills a lot of orphan disease drug development. It kills a lot of, it kind of puts a roadblock for smaller companies trying to grow. And so, and a lot of these larger companies just have massive manufacturing warehouses, and they can drop the price there. But it puts a little bit of a stranglehold on who can develop drugs and who can get them to market fast, right? And I would love to see some of that shifted back towards, small companies doing smart research and having a path forward to real therapeutic development. And I think that level of competition would help bring down a lot of the pricing. If you don't just have, the top 10 drug companies in the world controlling the vast majority of manufacturing. So I would love to see that happen.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. Again, I think there's plenty of room to empower the smaller players. And a lot of innovation is really coming from smaller biotechs. It's not really coming from larger pharmaceutical companies. And for people to compete, you have to give them some type of level playing field. And right now, it's not even close.
Not even close. The small biotech, happy days for them when they get snapped up and their technology gets out licensed, but then it goes into a company that's got a handle on the manufacturing. And so I'd love to see that leveled in some way.
Yeah, me too. I would love that as well. So obviously I've really enjoyed our conversation, but I want to open the floor to you for any final thoughts or commentary that you might have on anything you wanted to talk about, or maybe you forgot. I just want to make sure we get it all out there.
Yeah, sure. I think you also asked me what my vision for the company is and the future. I glossed over that. I was too excited about something else. No, I am deeply excited about the vision for the future that our company provides. Already we're producing human antibodies at scales and numbers that no one's ever seen before. And, they're clinically efficacious antibodies. We've already started to demonstrate that in our lab. We do it without animals. We do it without human infection, and things like that. Shifting the needle on how drug development happens is going to change the pricing. It is going to change the availability of drugs for orphan diseases. And I would love to see more of that happen. Another company that was doing something similar was Atomwise is doing AI development of small molecules, right? So things like that allow for better discovery faster. I am so excited for the future of that. And, our company is positioned to leverage human tissue in that process so that we can skip the animal step. We don't need it. It takes months and months. We can do this all in 3 weeks. And yeah, I'm super excited for the future of that. And then, all of that is on the way. These are the building blocks, getting the smaller tissues to work, demonstrating they behave the same way normal larger human tissues do. These are all the building blocks to building organs for transplantation, which I think is this phenomenal technology moonshot, and I don't say moonshot lightly, when astronauts go to the moon or we're going to Mars, think about all the different technologies that had to be developed and tested on the way. And how many good things spun out of that, and how many, advances we have in the world because we had this grand challenge. And so our company's grand challenge is to put a living solid organ in a human patient and have it function properly. Along the way, we're developing technologies left and right and figuring out how to commercialize those. So it's that's what I'm excited for in the future is getting that organ into someone, saving a life, giving them a better life, giving them their life back. And then also, capitalizing on all the things we develop in the process.
I mean, that's a powerful vision. And I'm curious to know, before we close, what is a plausible timeline for execution of that vision? 15 years, 20 years?
Everyone's favorite question. I love it. So I think, I really don't think it's that far off. We're already growing larger tissues in the lab than anyone ever has. And we're currently building our next generation system that can bioprint larger structures faster. That's really the main bottleneck at this moment. Is if you build something in 3D, it takes a prohibitively long time. And we've reduced that time down to the point where we can get in striking distance of solid organs. And so that's going to be up and running in the spring. We're really excited. And then after that, it's growing and testing, and then finding the transplant needs. So I always feel like it's about 3 years off. And I think I said that about a year ago. So things are moving forward. We're solving good problems, but I really do think it's within 3 to 5 years. I think this field is moving forward quickly, and there are a lot of people that are excited about it. So we're excited to just get it done. Yeah.
No, I don't think your timeline is, I think it's actually very realistic. I had a conversation with the NIH, the NCATS team, and I asked them a similar question, and their timeline was around that 5-year period as well. So
great.
Anything is possible if you believe. And from the time that you were 19, you've been a visionary, you've been an inventor, and I don't think your scientific brilliance is going to diminish anytime soon. So thank you. Honestly, thank you for a very refreshing, very informative, and very honest conversation. I look forward to staying in touch, and hopefully we can bring you back on the show in the future.
Absolutely. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Have a good day now. Okay.
You too. Take care.
All right, now, bye.